Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strip by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia. I am a digital content creator here based in Vancouver, Canada, and I was a former sugar baby. I'm also, I guess, an on-hold stripper, and yeah, on hold, like things are not open yet. I mean, my guest, who you will soon find out who it is, it's also shut down where they are from as well. So that's kind of me in a mini nutshell. And I do this podcast because I want to share stories and experiences of sex workers in all types of capacities and different angles and perspectives, and just give a holistic approach to what sex work is, what it really is, and not what the media paints it out to be. So that's a little introduction here, but most importantly, I would like to introduce this week's guest. They are a prominent sex worker based in Ontario, and I am so excited that we're finally able to connect, because it has taken some time and some effort and rescheduling and just back and forth. But I am so excited to bring Samantha Knoxx on to the show today. Hello.
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 Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so nice to finally be here with you.
I know. I mean, there is just so much scheduling conflict, and things work for me, and then you were going on tour, and then I'm we'll make a time. It'll happen.
Life. The universe lines up eventually.
Exactly. And now I think with the topic that we're going to be speaking about today, which is primarily Bill 251, which is a huge thing. It's basically, and we're going to get into all of this later, but it is basically the Combat Human Trafficking Act that is currently being proposed at the moment in terms of Canadian legislation here in Canada. And it's a really big topic. And we had some other discussion and points that we wanted to bring up as well before, when we wanted to record another episode, but that's all going to tie into everything we're going to be speaking about today. So again, the stars aligned, and now it's even more perfect. So I'm just really stoked that you're here. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to speak with me.
Thank you, and I'm also apologize for the mix-up of time and you getting up early for me.
No, that was completely my bad. So Samantha is based in Ontario, and I'm here in British Columbia, and there's a 3-hour time difference. So I mistakenly thought that, okay, it's 7 o'clock, right? 7 o'clock a.m. my time, which would be 10 o'clock their time, and I'm just where are they? And then I checked the messages, and it's 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that was all my bad. I am so sorry for giving you a mini heart attack this morning.
That's okay, honestly. It's all good.
You know what? We're here, and I apologize for all the rambling. I'm just really excited that you're here joining me today. But can you give the audience a breakdown of who you are? Define yourself, what it is that you do, who you are on your own terms, in your own words, and go.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Samantha. You can call me Sam, Sammy. I go by a lot of different names. I entered the industry as a stripper, and I worked at a number of different clubs in a number of different places. And I very quickly also was doing online work, and I actually traveled to the States and worked with some really cool porn performers, dabbled in some sugaring in between there and here, and then started working at a massage parlor, and then transitioned into full service work. And I would say I'm a full-time companion at this point. Considering that all the strip clubs are closed.
Yes.
And yeah, this is just my livelihood. It's honestly what makes me really happy and fulfilled. And on the side of that, I also work at and volunteer at an organization in London, Ontario called SafeSpace. It's one of the organizations that is a part of the Canadian Alliance for Sex Worker Law Reform.
Yes.
And we do a lot of work with our street-based sex workers at SafeSpace.
That is excellent. And the audience, to everyone here listening. You might have heard last week, I actually interviewed Jen Clayman from the Canadian Alliance for Sex Work Reform. So if that sounds familiar, that's where you might know that from. But that's really cool. I didn't know that about you. You are completely immersed in this community, and I love that so much.
Yeah, I'm swimming in it.
Which is great, and we can definitely talk about your advocacy as well, because you're definitely very outspoken online in our digital platforms as well, which I think is great, and which is why I'm like, you need to come onto the show soon. And now you're here, so I know that yes, there was like some scheduling conflicts before, but yes, you're quite busy. I mean, you were busy touring for a while as well. How has the work been going on? I mean, like I want to say it's the tail end of COVID. We're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, at least I think so. But how's everything going for you? Just want to check in.
Honestly, it's been good.
Good.
It's been really interesting navigating the world in general, let alone as a sex worker. There's only so many safety measures that you can take, and that's even in our personal lives, right? We have to go outside. We have to go to the grocery store. Sometimes we have to have childcare. We have to work. We all have to work to survive. That is what capitalism requires.
Yes.
We can't survive if we do not work. And it's interesting to see how many people kind of just expected this particular industry, the sex industry, the adult industry, to just stop, to just disappear. And obviously the ways in which we are denied resources because of the way stigma and current legislation impacts the way we can access and interact with the rest of the world. So I've been okay, honestly. I have been doing great. But it has been very difficult for me to see so many of my friends and peers, not just that are close to me, but throughout the country, throughout America, even Europe, to see everybody really struggling right now. And I think it really just highlights the importance of decriminalization.
Yes. So much of that. It's so important. And it's a difficult time right now, not just financially, but also mentally as well. It's just been a crazy time, as we've talked about on the show before. There are a lot of people that are struggling even to this day. I mean, even before the pandemic as well. It's also good to acknowledge that too, right? So, but I just want to check in, do a mental check here. How's it going?
Thank you. I hope you're doing really good as well.
Oh my gosh. This has been a really challenging week for me. I almost messaged you 5 hours, 8 hours ago to be I need to cancel. But I'm no, I need to do this. It's just been a crazy week, but...
Yeah, one of those months.
It's
years.
One of those
I don't really know.
I don't know.
It's endless.
It literally is, but I'm glad.
What is time?
I don't even know anymore. But let's get back to you. I don't want to detract from the conversation. This episode is all about you. But do you want to go chat a little bit about the type of work that you do? I thought your history is really interesting. So started off with stripping, and then you kind of went into a bit of massage, erotic massage. I see that you offer Nuru as well, and then now you are a full-time companion. Tell me about that.
So I love dancing, and starting off as a stripper definitely was I think a really safe way for me to be able to explore my capacities as a sex worker. Having that basis before going into spa work really allowed me to have the boundary setting skills that are necessary. To reduce the amount of irksome work events and even potentially traumatizing work events that can take place.
Right.
And that really helped me also transition into being a full-time companion. You know, I have had clients over the years, you know, that initially were clients or customers from the club, you know, that I have long-term relationships with, but I was so very terrified of how to navigate working independently. There's not a lot of resources out there. A lot of the resources / collectives that are out there are shite, for lack of a better term.
I can see that you're struggling there.
Yeah, like there's a lot of words that I could say, that they're not very inclusive, and that there's paywalls there, and the way that society has kind of put us in the shadows has made it really difficult for us to connect. And I think it's really interesting that my experience is going to be entirely different than that of a companion who was working, you know, 10 years ago or like 20 years ago or pre-internet, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have now transitioned into a full-time companion. I would love to visit the strip clubs when they open again.
Yes.
But, you know, there is a lot of issues with being out as a companion and being discriminated against by even other work environments because of the current legislation, and also because of the rampant whorephobia.
Yes.
You know, you're a stripper as well. I'm sure you're very familiar with the type of whorephobia that's perpetuated in those kinds of environments.
Yes.
And yeah, I just would much rather prefer to work independently as a worker, you know, whether I'm stripping or working as a companion or working online. You know, I had opportunities to connect with some more mainstream opportunities for pornography, but nothing ever really like panned out the way I was expecting, and the like blatant misogyny and like assaults and exploitation and just garbage was just like, yeah, I think I'd rather just do my own thing. So
totally,
I'm just doing my own thing now, and trying my best to make sure that I can like provide resources to my peers so that they can work more safely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since, you know, nobody else seems to give a crap about whether or not, you know, we experience workplace unsafety.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a word.
No, I get what you mean.
Workplace hazards.
Workplace hazards, workplace exploitation, you know, it's a thing. And I'm curious to hear, because I haven't talked about the porn industry in a long time. I think since the beginning of season 2. But if you want to brief us a little bit on your specific lived experience of how you entered porn, and how you view that, I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely dive in there.
Sure.
So I started out with premium Snapchat, and I really didn't love that. There was a company that came out called Fan Central that I started using because it was kind of more automated, right? They would just send you an email and be like, add this person. Right. But then I had an incident with them where I never got an email from them, and not that I didn't get an email from them, like I got the initial email, I added them, but then their system required that you like flag that this person, like check it off basically.
Oh.
And I guess I forgot to do that. So I had this guy on my thing for like 6 months, and they never sent me like an email to be like, hey, like you never added him, like you should probably like check back and do that.
Oh.
And they just contacted me and told me that they had refunded him completely. And I actually didn't see that email because at that point I had like hundreds of emails coming in from multiple different platforms and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really notice it right away. And then he had then been on my page for another additional like 3 or 4 months. So
seriously?
he got that for free entirely. And then obviously I owed them money for like service charges and stuff. And so I was like, wow, this is garbage.
So shitty.
Yeah, and then I actually joined OnlyFans when it was only taking 10%, and like it was an obscure like random website that I had actually heard about from another worker. So I've been on there for about 4 years. I had set up a profile on ManyVids, AP Clips,
right.
Pornhub, and I was really enjoying filming. I really was only really interested in doing trade content and collaborations because I didn't really want to get paid, $800 to $1,500 to provide a mega corporation the rights to my content forever, and not make any
residuals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
There's no royalties for porn.
Yes.
So I just wasn't really down for that. I mean, I thought maybe if it happened, I could pick and choose a couple things I would be okay with for promotional purposes, right? It would get my face out there more.
Yeah.
But then as those connections were being made, I realized how toxic and shitty that side of the industry is, and just how many of the producers are predators, or how many of the male performers are predators, or how many of the white female thin conventionally attractive performers are racist.
Oh my God.
The pay discrepancies between people of color in the industry,
yes,
the racism that it's literally just integrated in there, the fact that there's no condom porn, and just all these different aspects of the industry that were just really off-putting for me.
Yeah.
And then I had some instances where I worked with people and it was really cool and all, but I had one particular individual I worked with whose baby mama ended up DMing me and harassing me and threatening.
What?
And I was like, your baby daddy's a whole ass porn star and you're not even together, and I live in a different country. This is not it, sweetie.
Yeah, no. Oh my gosh, that is so crazy.
Yeah, and then I was actually headed to the AVNs in 2020, and I had a lot of I had taken a bit of a break from filming. I was really focused on dancing and just doing the private events and stuff, and doing my own content. And I was super excited to go and work with a bunch of really cool people.
Yeah.
And then I was detained by the Border Patrol, basically, and interrogated and banned. So that kind of put a little bit of a stop in that. And then COVID hit.
Holy shit. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. I didn't know this. So wait. Going into the States.
Yeah, I was flying into Las Vegas for the AVN convention.
Right.
And admittedly, I didn't have a return flight ticket because I was planning on, I had then a flight to Florida where my girlfriend lives and my stepsister. And I was going to stay there for a month. And then we were going to drive up from Florida.
Oh,
and I guess that was just another red flag for them. That I had been visiting quite a bit was a red flag.
Shit.
And they also use facial recognition technology. So,
whoa.
Yeah, they were we have reason to believe you're here to provide illicit services. And I was I'm not and admittedly, my experience of that was not overly it was traumatizing, but I am a well-articulated individual. I'm white and I'm pretty, and I had a fairly young officer who was doing my interrogation and stuff, and so they were nice to me. They let me go to the bathroom. They got one of the flight attendants to get me food because I was there for 12 hours.
What? Oh my God.
And then they put me on a plane and shipped me back to Canada. And when I got home, I opened up the documents they'd given me, and they had fingerprinted me and everything as well. Took my phone. I didn't have my device for literally 12 hours until I got on the plane.
Oh my God.
And I got home, and they had basically put on my documents that I'm banned for 5 years, and that the reason it was because I was prostituting myself. And
oh my gosh,
bro, I was just going to film some porn, which is not illegal, and go see my girlfriend.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry you went through that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what transitioned. Thank you, by the way. But that's kind of what transitioned when things transitioned for me, because I was really interested in dabbling more into full service.
Yeah.
But I was not sure if I wanted to advertise because of the risk of that. And now I'm like, hey, I'm banned. Yeah, like, you're lost.
Well, you know what? That's a great way. I mean, like, for you to really pivot that and, like, pivot your way of thinking, feel like, okay, well, that's a lost opportunity. I'm going to go completely this way now. Like, good for you for keeping on that hustle and just, you know, rolling with it here. And, you know, it's a temporary ban that's going to end. There's an end date on that, so.
Well, then there's the, like, details they don't tell you where they, like, for this particular industry, they want you to have been exited for a minimum of 10 years and provide evidence that you've been working in a different industry. But they won't tell you that. They'll just deny your application for a waiver.
Are you kidding?
But it is something that, like, other sex workers have had experience with. So
oh my God.
I am not holding out hope. And if I wanted to, like, I could, in theory, appeal it.
Yeah.
But I think now, because I am so open about being a provider, that they could say, well, look, she's a whore.
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah, I wasn't a whore, and now I am.
And now I am.
You.
You made me one. God damn it.
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, well, it's just America. I mean, there are a lot of American listeners here. I'm not saying this to offend anyone, but that's really shitty of them to do that to you. Oh,
yeah.
God.
It's not, I'm not the only one, right? Like, it happens a lot, and it happens from even countries where sex work is decriminalized. Like, certain people from Australia, certain states in Australia where sex work is decriminalized, if they're having a license is something that the U.S. government can say, hey, no, even if you were going just on a vacation, even if your grandmother was dying and she lived in Florida, you know, they might deny you entry. So,
you know what? You're absolutely right. Because, oh my God, I haven't said this story in so long, but I'll make it super quick. But basically, when I went to New Zealand a couple years ago, I went down to visit a friend, and I was working in luxury travel. So I had to go down to Australia to, like, rate some hotels and stuff. And then I was also in Fiji as well. Because I was like, if I'm in the Pacific Islands, I'm just going to go everywhere. So, so after Fiji, I was going to go to New Zealand. And basically, I got there and I got questioned for 4 hours, missed my flight because they found some information that I was a sugar baby, like, many, many years ago. Like, I haven't really sugared in a long time. And they found some information on me. They questioned me, and they weren't sure if they were going to let me into their country, even though it is also decriminalized over there as well. So I'm like, what the fuck? And honestly, like, that was, at the time, really traumatizing to me too. But I totally forgot about that whole aspect of it. But it's just so unfair. So unfair.
There's just no reason. Like, I'm just trying to visit your country and bring you some of my dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, this is completely unwarranted. But, like, this is from several years back. But it was just like, ugh. Anyways.
I'm sorry that happened.
It's in the past. It's great now. Like, I mean, it's just stressful too, and like, I can tell you the details later, but that's just in a nutshell.
Yeah, we can trauma bond later.
Trauma bond later. I love that. Well, why don't we steer it back? Let's steer it back to you, and we can steer it back in terms of, like, talking about Bill 251, and this is, like, a huge topic, and we said this off mic earlier, but it's just, again, maybe, like, we don't really even know what's happening because this was introduced. So Bill 251 was introduced back in February of this year in Toronto by Ontario attorney Sylvia Jones, and it is the Combat Human Trafficking Act. So I love how you described this before, but basically the Canadian equivalent of SESTA FOSTA, and we're just hearing about it now, which is crazy to me. It just underwent its first reading here in Ontario, Canada, and I guess it was brought up because
everyone signed off. Everyone was like, yeah, anti-trafficking, woo!
Yeah, which is frightening for us. It's frightening for our community. So did you want to go into this? Because, you were like, have you heard about this? We need to talk about this. And I'm like,
I would love to.
Yes.
Yeah, so to start, maybe I want to touch on why this first reading got passed so quickly and why there's been no pushback for it. And that has a lot to do with how more often than not these bills are proposed as anti-trafficking bills,
Yes.
and or anti child exploitation.
Yes.
Which is all, yes, obviously we don't want children or anybody to be exploited.
Right.
We especially don't want people to be sexually exploited. But conflating sex work with sex trafficking is counterproductive to ensuring that sex workers are not getting exploited. And as we saw with SESTA FOSTA, when you conflate sex work with sex trafficking, it does result in further harm coming to the industry and to workers.
Yes.
It doesn't actually stop trafficking from happening. It actually facilitates more need for people to turn to abusers. I know many people that choose to have a pimp or a manager, as they would say, because it is safer to have somebody present. And our current laws, Bill C-36, which is the Canadian prostitution laws,
yes,
they criminalize much of the way we can work safely as full service workers, including having security, working together, working in spaces together. And there's a lot of gray area and loopholes of that particular bill.
Yes.
Which I'm sure Jen Clement touched on from the Alliance.
Yes.
But this particular bill, it also conflates human trafficking with sex trafficking, which I just think is so much worse, honestly, than what they did with SESTA FOSTA, because it completely ignores that the exploitation is happening in other industries. That human trafficking isn't just sex trafficking. Not all victims of human trafficking are being sex trafficked.
Right.
Many of them are being exploited in the agriculture industry,
or forced into types of labor,
hospitality industry, in the trades industries, construction, all these other areas. And to eradicate and conflate those definitions that define the differences between those types of trafficking is a disservice to the people that they are claiming that they want to protect and help no longer be exploited.
Right. Yes. So eloquently put. Oh, you're so well articulated in the way that you speak. I love it.
I was a nerd. I read a lot of books.
I love it. But yeah, you said it so perfectly there, because they're only limiting trafficking to the sexual side of it. But as you said, and also if listeners, if you want to listen back to the episode I had with Dr. Tamara O'Doherty, where we go into Bill 36 ad nauseum in that episode, you'll see that it's like, what kind of exploitation? There are so many different kinds of exploitation when it comes to trafficking. It's not just limited to the sexual side of it. So, but oftentimes these policymakers and legislators, that's the only thing that they see.
Ooh, sex.
Yeah. Scary. Right. So, thank you so much for giving people a bit of a backstory here, too, in terms of like why this is happening, why this is brought up. And of course, and we're not diminishing the fact that trafficking isn't a problem. It is. Sylvia Jones, the attorney who brought it up, she claimed that, and I think these are obviously right, like real statistics, but 40% of trafficking in Canada happens right in Ontario. So I understand where she's coming from, but again, it's dangerous to combine the two in terms of, like, as you said, sex trafficking or people that are in sex trafficking. Like, it's sex workers does not equal human trafficking.
Yeah. And the ways, there's so many nuances there as well. Like, do you happen to, maybe this will bring it to thought, like some people you might know, but you ever had somebody tell you about their boyfriend? You know, how he doesn't work right now, and you pay all the bills, and you're working really hard, and you're shaking your butt, and you're bringing home all that dough, and your boyfriend's real happy. How many of us know somebody like that?
Yeah.
How many of us know a sex worker who has a partner like that? That's gendered violence and exploitation.
Yes.
And that's like the most common form of exploitation I want to say we see in this industry is financial exploitation, because of the lucrative nature, because we are denied access to resources, because I can't go to a landlord and say, hey, I'm a sex worker.
Right.
It's harder for me to prove my income, even if I have an accountant, because they're going to want to know what kind of work I do.
Right.
All these other barriers that impact the way we can navigate the world. And then it allows for other people to take advantage of that.
Right.
Those are things that these types of trafficking bills are not targeting. And if I'm being honest, I don't think these people give a frickin' damn about victims of trafficking. I think they truly want to eradicate sex work because they are prohibitionists. And this is the way to do that, by playing on the hearts of Canadians and saying, look, you and I both know that trafficking is so terrible.
Right.
Like, we have to do everything we can to stop it. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it
and
totally is.
And they don't actually listen to the people that are living these experiences. That I have friends, I'm sure you might too, or at least know people that are victims of trafficking that are now independent, consensual sex workers.
Right.
Because, again, like, there's so many nuances to this industry, and sometimes things do intersect with types of abuse that are out there and types of exploitation, but that's all systemic, and that could all be fixed by providing more social services, by providing more community support, by creating more accessibility and reducing stigma.
So much of that, so much. And I loved what you said there in terms of, like, this is a systemic problem. It definitely is.
Deeply rooted.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really problematic right now. And so basically, if I know there's a lot of non-Canadian listeners on the show, it seems like Canadian listeners are going down and other international listeners are going up on the show. But basically, for a bill to become a law, it needs to go through a few steps. So where Bill 251 is now, it's past its first reading, which means senators and legislators would have to vote on this. Next, it'll have to go on its way to its second reading. And at this point, like, the bill cannot be amended at this stage, which is scary because that's, like, literally the next stage. And yeah, they'll debate the scope of the bill, they'll vote on it again, it goes to the committee stage, then it goes to the committee reporting stage. At all of these points, they'll try to bring people that are affected by the bill. So, hopefully it doesn't have to go through the next round. But basically it keeps going through the stages. It goes through a third reading, goes to the House of Commons, and then goes through the Royal Assent where it becomes a law. So it's breaking news just recently, at the time of recording. This is going to be back in mid-May, because there's a lot of groups, and obviously our community, that are affected by it. When we speak about who's at risk, we are speaking about obviously us, sex workers, but also BIPOC individuals, especially Indigenous women and girls, or queer and trans, LGBTQ community, migrant workers. These are all groups that are super marginalized and oftentimes further targeted by the police. And I know, Sam, you have a lot to say in terms of policing. Would we like to kind of move into that aspect of the conversation?
Yeah, totally. It's actually the next point I totally wanted to touch on.
Perfect.
So part of this bill is to expand police power to provide them access to anywhere they may have suspicion that sex work is occurring.
Suspicion,
So
good word,
you could be at home and they could say, I think you are a sex worker and I'm coming into your house. It could be your nail salon, right? And that ties into what you were saying about BIPOC communities being affected and how the police already what's the word I'm looking for here?
Target.
Wow, I just had a brain fart. Surveil.
Yeah.
Very hyper surveil these particular types of communities.
Right.
And expanding power to police to basically give them unfettered access upon suspicion is going to cause harm. And I personally think that it's really, really interesting how after last summer, all of this discussion about reforming the police and abolishing the police and how many of the Ontario and across Canada, but how many of the police departments how many of the cities have not increased police department funding? The city of Toronto, they actually said that they don't want any more money. And I think that's just a PR stunt. But this particular legislation will allow them to redirect funds back into the police force. So what I really think that this also is coming down to is the police and how they are losing power. People are seeing that they are causing more harm than good. And this particular bill will give them some power back, will give them some funding back. And then the other part of the bill is that it will mingle more of our social services with police. So police will have more access to information that social workers may have. Throughout all of this abolishment and reform discussion, a lot has been said about how we need to redirect funding from police forces into more social services. We need to have mental health professionals showing up for wellness checks. We need to have people that actually have de-escalation training that are present for these kinds of situations. And continuing to mingle police with these types of services is not going to get us to where we need to best serve the public. And then the last little bit I just want to touch on real quick is
take your time.
One of the parts of this bill is that hotels will have to keep a register. Airbnbs will have to keep a register. Basically, all these spaces that you and I both use, whether you're a sex worker or not, you will be surveilled.
Yeah.
Because the police will want to be able to access these. It's basically what SESTA FOSTA was doing with different platforms and requiring them essentially to do their due diligence, to keep track of data, and to refrain from having exploitation happening on their sites.
Yeah.
So basically, they will require hotels, short-term stays, long-term stays, potentially even landlords, maybe, to keep a record of the comings and goings of human beings. And that is obviously going to seriously impact many sex workers' abilities to work because, admittedly, even throughout COVID, it's been a lot harder to work out of these kinds of spaces because surveillance has already been increased tenfold.
Yeah.
But to make it a requirement for them to keep all of these types of records, I think, if this bill passes, God forbid, we'll see a lot more increase in street-based work, and we'll see an increase in people turning to pimps who have spaces that are not hotels, that have apartments that they can rent out, that they can use. It's just going to push things more underground if we don't have workplaces to work from.
Absolutely.
That are safe, right?
Yeah, no. And that was the most scary part of the bill as well, that I found the most frightening, the most problematic too, is that what you said there about hotels and short-term stays or long-term stays, that, the police will have more access to this information if they have quote unquote reasonable grounds. And as you said earlier, AKA suspicion, just suspicion.
Yeah, which is, you look like a whore.
Yeah, exactly. Which is
you look like you're being trafficked.
And what does that even look like? It's just, what does that even mean?
What is media depicted as, though? It's a young-looking Asian woman with ropes around her wrists. It's those are the images. That's the imagery that they put out there. It is targeting BIPOC communities primarily. it ignores the fact that there's a lot of white women that are also involved in this too. And so there are white women or other women being trafficked that don't fit their stereotype of what it looks like to be trafficked. Are they going to fall through the gaps?
Yeah. That's totally a valid concern because, again, it's imbalanced. And it is really scary for that to happen because that's the reality for these marginalized communities already. And for this bill to give more power to police to surveil them even more is really scary.
Yeah.
Really scary.
And it obviously will impact, like, I personally think that particular little thing was thrown in there because they know that it will impact companions specifically because they know that those are spaces that we use for work 100%.
Exactly.
And it's obviously going to have a huge impact on migrant workers because, of status, of application status. Like, one of the things, and I believe, I might, don't quote me on this, but I believe that the current application process to become a Canadian includes you basically saying you will not do sex work.
Well,
I was reading a thread on that a while back, and it's something I think quite a few countries have in place that, like, even if you got your citizenship here eventually, or your
like permanent residency.
Yeah, your permanent residency card, they could revoke it if they find out that you're doing sex work. So, like, this is going to harm migrant workers that are doing sex work, which is some of the work, like, people do this work because it's lucrative and you can make more money and have more time and all the positives that there are to this industry.
Positives. Yeah.
Which can be heavily outweighed by, like, the negatives, especially when you have all these intersections of marginalizations taking place. Yeah, it's really scary, honestly.
It's really scary. I mean, I know that with the last episode, Jen really brought that up too. And I really want to do an episode on that eventually. But it's
Butterfly Project.
Yes, exactly. I've been meaning to reach out to them. It's on my list of potential people I need to contact. But Butterfly Project, if you're listening, I want you on my show.
Yeah. They're probably super swamped right now, honestly. This is really scary for a lot of people, right?
Absolutely.
Even for myself, I recently had to dox myself to the police because of a man who was, like, threatening me.
Oh, geez.
And I had to sit with it for a bit and be like, okay, do I report this and reduce my risk of experiencing violence at the hands of this woman beater? Or do I not? Because what if this bill passes and now they know where I live, my name, and all these details about me, and that I'm a worker? So.
And then you potentially being
criminalized.
And
how that will impact, like, people's custody with their children and stuff.
Because, under this bill, if it becomes law, like, people's children can be taken away. Which
easy peasy. Tossed into programs. And that's going to significantly impact Indigenous communities because we all know, or maybe we don't all know, but the Canadian Association or Canadian Children's Services, I can't remember what it's called, CAS, was founded by the same gosh darn churches that founded the residential schools, and that the rates of Indigenous children in the foster care system are higher than any other demographic.
Right.
So you know that they'll target BIPOC sex workers. You know that they'll target the children of these workers. 100%. And what are we going to be able to do about it?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like much.
No. And, like, another concern, I mean, in addition to that, there's so many consequences because of if this ever becomes enacted. But, just, like, the ability to enter places without a warrant. Which is fucking scary. Like, no? Like,
terrifying.
How?
Terrifying.
Again, reasonable grounds.
Which is just suspicion, which is just whorephobia.
Yeah, basically. So, I mean, there's a ton of speculation around this bill, tons of concern around this bill because it's an infiltration of not only physical spaces, but also digital or like online spaces as well. I know that we wanted to talk about that, like originally when we wanted to do an episode, we wanted to talk about the possible speculation of the deplatforming of Twitter, but why don't we kind of go into like the online aspect of like how this will be affected?
Yeah, totally. I think it's really coincidental that this is taking place at the same time, so shortly after the court case against Pornhub and their loss of partnership with Discover, Visa, MasterCard,
right.
And how, like, basically the sister organizations of those abolitionist religious orgs that headed the fight against Pornhub, to touch on briefly, was basically accusing Pornhub of facilitating child exploitation and sexual exploitation.
Right.
And it's actually been found out by like a watchdog group that Facebook actually has more cases of child exploitation occurring on their platform. So, it's really shitty that Pornhub, has been really vilified. And while I don't love them, it's very interesting that the Canadian government is now, or these organizations are now filing attacks on Pornhub in Canada. And that while that is happening, the stuff with the Alliance pushing for Bill C-36 to be reformed is happening. Yes. And now this bill has been proposed and is targeting the online realm, which I think is really interesting because part of the Harvey Anwar case where the judge ruled the current legislation of Bill C-36 is unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court Justice Philip Sutherland, who also ruled that it is unconstitutional, and basically, as of his ruling, law enforcement cannot enforce some of the legislation, including advertisement. And here we come full circle. They're trying to police our ability to advertise our services.
Right.
So I am quite concerned that websites like Leo's List and Trist and whatnot will be targeted just like Backpage was.
Yeah.
If this bill is passed. And then what? Then we go back to the streets?
Yeah.
Newspapers?
Just all going backwards. How is this ever progressive? How is this even productive? It really doesn't benefit anyone.
A slap in the face. I apologize. Continue.
No. Continue.
I was just going to say it's a big slap in the face that while the Alliance is trying to push for this, the reform of, actually I have it just written down here, that the Alliance specifically is, the prohibitions against impeding traffic, public communication, purchasing, materially benefiting, and recruiting and advertising are all the areas of Bill C-36 they are trying to repeal or to make it safer. And I think it's really coincidental that they're doing this at the time that the Alliance is already involved in that particular case, and they don't have the time or the capacity to target this in Ontario. And that the Ontario government specifically has tried to appeal the Justice Philip Sutherland's decision. That right after he made that decision, they basically said we think that this is terrible, and that this judge is actually going to cause harm. That these laws actually protect individuals in the sex trade, and here I quote, that they're critical in protecting individuals in the sex trade, which target those who prey upon and manipulate them. And that we call upon our government to defend the law while ensuring continued supports are available for women to exit the sex trade.
Oh, God. And of course...
Not for us to work more safely, but for us to exit.
Yeah. And, when did they ever consult with us?
They didn't.
Right? It's just
the Ontario government does not care. They are prohibitionists.
No. Oh my God. These people just have absolutely no understanding of the work that we do. I don't think they even care to speak to us. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Doing that.
No, continue. I was just making a statement.
Yeah, they really don't understand. I think they also don't understand even the basis of gendered violence. Because they'll be like, just wear better clothes, or don't go outside late at night, and all these victim blamey kind of things.
Yes.
And then they don't actually ever provide solutions. Like, what if in school we taught kids about consent, right? About the types of abuse and exploitation that can occur. Like, those are the ways in which we can produce harm reduction and keep people safe, not after they've already been harmed, right? And taking away those supports that they claim are there. Like, I have a friend who's trying to exit the industry right now, and there is nothing for them.
Oh, gosh.
There's nothing for them with the current legislation. There are no exit resources. There are no supports. The only supports that exist are within our community with organizations like Maggie's, like SafeSpace, like PACE, like the Butterfly Project, that provide that peer support, that provide those resources. And we're not out here trying to say, oh yeah, you need to quit, you need to leave. No. This is the root of all your problems. It's acknowledging the nuances, and that this is work, like any other kind of work.
Yes.
And that these are labor rights issues. And that is the root of this, is we need a labor rights movement.
Absolutely.
Just as much as we need decriminalization.
Yes, because decriminalization is only one aspect of this in terms of like solving this problem and this war between the government and us.
Well, the exploitation that happens at like brick and mortar establishments like strip clubs and parlors is actually like so ingrained into us to be the normal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, have you ever paid a fine? Have you ever paid a door fee? Like, those are all things that are against our current labor legislation. But like, nobody cares if a stripper's bitching about labor rights.
Right. And we've had like tons of episodes on that too, speaking about the atrocities that happen in terms of like labor exploitation in strip clubs, especially with episode with Onyx Sachi. That was a really great episode. Yes, me too. She was also one of those people that were like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Samantha Knoxx is kind of like coming onto the show. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just so problematic on so many levels, as you said. It's not just a physical thing. It's also an online thing as well, because what is this going to do? This is going to help further push our work underground, and will cause it'll cause some security issues, and our lack of safety is going to go downhill. It's just not going to exist anymore.
Exactly. And like, it's so scary to think, because I know like my fair share of people that were like around during Backpage, and like the aftermath of Backpage being deleted, and how people had to pivot. And like, this is taking it so much farther. Like, this is kicking us off. This is just getting rid of us, right? Bills like this make it so we can't exist, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it is. Basically that. Sorry, continue. No, I'm interrupting.
No, it's okay. That's pretty much what I was just saying. It was just like, it was stuck in my throat. It really, like, truly to my core, it doesn't make sense to me how people can say, I know what's best for you.
Right.
I've never walked a day in your shoes, but I know what's best for you, because my moral compass tells me so.
It totally is a quote-unquote morality issue. It's a very conservative way of thinking. It's rooted in all these, and it's rooted in religion. Like it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's really completely unfair to our community. And again, I just feel like, simply put, the aim here is just to eradicate the sex industry.
Yeah,
completely.
I just want to actually I do a little shout out here, because we were talking about like religion and stuff. But
please,
with my work at SafeSpace in the last year, since COVID started, we have had the absolute privilege and delight of working with a religious organization called YFC, which is Youth for Christ. based here in London. This is with my work at SafeSpace. And, when this church group approached us and said, hey, we'd love to work with you. We want to help. How can we help?
Interesting.
We were pretty, there was a lot of trepidation. There was a lot of concern of, are there ulterior motives here? Like every other religious group or religious person we've interacted with, do they really want to help, or do they want to tell us how we need help?
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
And they didn't.
No.
They're the people that I have met there I've learned so much from them.
Wow.
And they have learned so much from me. I would like to say, I'm probably the first sex worker many of them ever actually met.
Wow.
And had chats with about like the work that I do.
Yeah.
And the love and the welcome that I've felt from that group has been like so essential in me maintaining like my sanity throughout all of this, and just having some faith that like if we really do start with our neighbors and our community and talk to people about our experiences as workers and kind of fight some of this stigma, we'll have more people on our side that will be rooting for us.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
That's where I think this all starts, because this kind of the activist work, the like behind the scenes work, the like case work and all of that is exhausting.
It is.
And it takes a lot of time and capacity that a lot of us don't have, because we are already doing so much to support our community because nobody else is.
Right.
And it's really so important, I think, to really, that's why like your podcast is so important, because you are putting out information out there that people that are not in this industry can now access.
Yes.
And they can decide on their own now what their perceptions of the industry are, and they can pass that information on instead of just consuming mainstream media and Hollywood garbage that depicts us in one particular light, as in one facet, when we are a community of diamonds, and there are so many different lights that shine here, and so many different aspects of this, especially throughout how many different types of sex work there are.
So many. So many.
Yeah, sorry, I just went off on a little tangent there.
No, tangents are always welcome. And I think that's really interesting too, because I was like, how did they even approach you? Like, how did this even come about? They just contacted the SafeSpace? Like, what?
Yeah, they just said, hey, what do you need right now? We were like, damn, we need help.
Wow. That is so cool. And like, I have my reservations about like religion and stuff too. I was born and raised Roman Catholic.
Lovely.
Yeah, went through that whole system for like 13 years of my life, and then like I got to university, started questioning everything, and I'm like, what's going on? Yeah, so that's really surprising to hear. But I mean, I say surprising, but I say that in a good way, and just genuinely shocked that I'm just so used to them projecting conservative religious types of views. I'm just so used to that like, and I get that, like, say like from my mom and like from my family, because they're super religious, and it's just like, oh my god, like I just get defensive really quickly. So it's like, what did they do? What did they say? But that's awesome. That's so good to hear.
Yeah, no, it's actually and it really, like, it wasn't just like a initial kind of like show of support. It's been so many hours. They do meals for us. It was at one point 4 times a week, I believe.
Wow.
And they would come out and they would serve the food with us. And if we needed anything, like, they bring us donations all the time. They've actually lost out on some of their own donors who said, we will not continue donating to you if you choose to continue to support this organization.
Wow.
And they've said, okay, cool. Good luck. Have a nice life. Like, we're doing the right thing right now.
Wow.
So
that
it's
is
just
so cool.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, oh my god. This is nice. This is really great. I mean, and it's kind of nice that we're like ending on like a positive note too.
Yeah.
You gotta balance it out a little bit. I know like there's been a lot, especially starting with season 2, there were like a lot of very politically heavy episodes, but I also think it's really important to to showcase that. And because it's really important, because this is happening like to this day. This is happening right now. And I'm just trying to inform, the public of what's happening to our community. So it's needed.
So we can hopefully stop it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So
on that note, I do have something I would love to share with you and the viewers.
Please.
I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but there is a worker movement, an industrial movement. So it's actually called SWIM, the Sex Worker Industrial Movement. And we're just in infancy, but it is a focus on the labor rights aspect of the current landscape of Canada and how workers can come together to provide each other support and guidance and resources. And as I might have mentioned to you, like my goal right now is to work on a resource platform for workers to be able to provide safe spaces, safe access to like people that provide legal aid or, just people that are safe for us. And I would love to pass along some more information to you about SWIM and some of the other organizations that people can get involved with, either in their own local community or at a distance from, the online realm. Lots of cool projects if sex workers are listening and you're interested in maybe getting involved. Yeah, I'd love to hear from y'all and see what your needs are as well.
That is so cool. Yeah, absolutely. Send me any kind of links. I could post it in the show notes below when this is live. So yeah, please share. Like, I think that what you're doing is fantastic, and I'd love to hear more about that after the show. So
yeah, we'll have to get together like when we both find some time to chit chat. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on right now, despite all of like the awful things that are happening as well.
Exactly. And I guess this is a good time to segue into the Q&A, which is basically kind of similar to what you were saying there too, in terms of, and like a couple questions just came in, like how can we help? Is there any petitions going on online for this? But how do we stop this in terms of like what questions came in? So if you have any answers or have any resources that you'd like to plug, please do.
Yeah. Okay. So first and foremost, tip sex workers. We're struggling right now.
Yes.
You can donate to sex worker organizations that help, especially provide resources to our street-based workers, like Maggie's, like SafeSpace. If you check out my website, SamanthaKnoxx.com, I have a direct link to donate to SafeSpace.
Oh, cool.
Or if you want to check out the Canadian Alliance for Sex Worker Law Reform website, they have a list of all of the organizations that belongs to the Alliance that you could donate to. Where you are, PACE, Vancouver is doing a tremendous amount of work right now.
Yes.
And they could definitely use the support. You could inquire about volunteering at those types of organizations. I'm not sure about the specifics of other orgs. Some of them are potentially only for workers in the community to join. But I know, like SafeSpace, for example, we do accept volunteers that are just allies. Not just allies, but are allies. And then also, like, write to your MPs.
Yeah.
Like, your particular MP and your representatives, wherever you are. If you aren't in Canada, you can write to the Prime Minister and just basically tell them that we deserve to just exist and we deserve equal rights and treatment, just like any other industry. I really would like to get a little, what's it called? Like an email zap going.
Yeah.
So it's like a pre-made template.
Sure.
But I'm trying to figure out how to do that. But specifically for the this subject, like Bill 251, I really am hoping to get something going by next week for that.
Okay.
I don't really know how effective it will be, since I think they were really hoping to push this through without anybody knowing. But
I mean, that's awesome.
So just make noise. Talk to your friends about sex work.
Yeah.
Just bring it up casually in conversation. Like, you know, just be like, hey, like, have you heard about, I don't know, however you want to bring it up.
Yeah.
But that really helps combat stigma, you know,
100%.
even just saying like, oh, like one of my favorite podcasts is actually a sex worker podcast, right? Just normalizing the discourse around this type of work, because it's not like if your friend were a construction worker that you would be like, oh yeah, like, so sorry, like my mom really hates construction workers, so like we can't talk about what you do for work.
But yeah, no, I love everything that you're saying here. I love the root of just normalizing this conversation. I think that's super great. And as you said, this just by introducing this kind of conversation into your day-to-day will help reduce stigma. So important. And also, it's like the basis of this podcast. So simply put.
Exactly that.
But before I let you go, where can we find you?
Ooh, okay. Well, you can find me on Instagram. It's Samantha _Knoxx with 2 X's. OXO. I know that's a mouthful. My link tree is there. Actually, I'm probably just going to link all of my stuff to my website in the next week. So by the time this is put up onto your page, you'll probably just be able to go to samanthaknoxx.com and find everything.
Perfect. Awesome.
But be warned, that is obviously my companion site. There is no nudity on there, but it's not just like one aspect of my work. It will be like a place where you can find everything.
That's awesome. So cool. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today. It was so nice to finally connect with you and speak and to bring you on. And just your advocacy is admirable, and I love everything that you're doing. You're making waves.
It's funny, I'm a Cancer, and I do say that often, that I'm just here swimming through life, maybe making a splash here and there. So,
perfect.
Thank you for having me. This has been really lovely, and I'm really excited just, you know, even just to get feedback about people's thoughts on this. And yeah, like, feel free to this is to the listeners, but feel free to reach out to me. Please do so respectfully.
Yes.
And if you're going to be asking me questions about my work, please email me instead. You know, most platforms will flag our accounts. So I would like to keep the presence I have currently. And to you, like, thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to chat anytime, even if you just want to talk about if you just want to shoot the shit or whatever.
For sure.
Cool to do that. Or if you need any support or have any questions or are in need of, like, maybe direction towards some people who might be good to chat with.
For sure.
I definitely know a lot of people.
So. You sure do. And I will definitely take you up on that offer. Thank you so much, Samantha. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And don't forget, it's new episodes every single Sunday. It is Sia Steph is my personal, or Strip by Sia on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm really active now on Twitter. I've just changed my handle there to Strip by Sia, so you can easily find me there. And maybe give it a give it a rating, a like, share, subscribe, review, do all the things. Spread the word. I would love that. And
yes,
right, like, spread the word. That's what we need. And I'll catch everyone in for another episode next Sunday. Bye. You're listening to Strip by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia, artwork by Maria Bellandarama, music by Ted D, and photography by Ian Dabburn.